And so, guys, we are now up to the time that we've been waiting for our first guest of the evening. We're going to bring her on, and that is Angela out of Kansas City. How are you doing, Angela?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm fantastic. And before, we came live, I was like, dude, your pink shirt like matches perfectly. It's like it like blends almost just like we planned it. Like with the whole frame here. You look great.
Thank you.
Rock and roll. Like I feel like I don't match. I'm wearing this black shirt and I'm like blending in with the background. Good times. So, okay, Angela, as I start with every survivor we have on the show, I want you to take us through how you found out you had breast cancer. What led you to that moment in time?
Okay. Everything started for me in September. I was married. I got married in September of 2016. And I was really tired after my wedding. In fact, on my honeymoon, I was falling asleep really early every night. And I was really unusually tired. And I thought it might have been my thyroid. And so I went to the doctor and talked to her, and they tested things. And she came back and said, "You have mono." And I was shocked. She said, "In fact, you were at the end stage of mono. So you actually had mono at your wedding. So I must have
Oh
just
my
pushed
gosh.
through."
Wow, that's
And
crazy.
yeah, it was, I had no clue. And fast forward a few months, and I have three chihuahuas, and one of my dogs, Rusty, was sitting on my chest as he likes to do. And he went to jump off. And when he jumped, I was like, "Oh, what is that?" Because I had kind of a sharp pain when he jumped off. And I felt, and there was a lump there. And I didn't think anything of it. I talked to my husband, and he was like, "Yeah, I mentioned that to you a few months ago." And I didn't really pay any attention to it. And before long, it got to the point where you could grab it. And I, at that point, thought I should probably talk to somebody about this.
Yeah, that must have been kind of terrifying that when it got to that size.
Yeah, once you could grab it, it was really, really scary for me.
Were
Now, I had a mammogram a year prior to, and they told me that there was nothing abnormal on my mammogram. So, in my mind, cancer literally never crossed my mind. And so I went to the doctor, and I went to my primary care physician actually, and I said, "I have non-lactating mastitis, and um I need an antibiotic." And she's like, "No, I'm not giving you that." And I said, "Well, I'm not getting a mammogram." And she and I went back and forth, and we got pretty nasty with
I
each
gotta I
other.
gotta ask, like, why were you so opposed to a mammogram at this point? Just because you had one recently?
Because I'd had one recently, and the doctor coded it in a way that my insurance did not cover it.
Ah,
And financially, it was not going to be something I wanted to take on.
yeah, yeah. Wow.
And so we went back and forth, and she said, "Well, I refuse to prescribe it to you." And we finally agreed on getting an ultrasound. And so I went the next day and got an ultrasound, and they wouldn't let me leave. They told me I had to go in immediately and get a mammogram, and I actually had to go to work. So I was able to get out of there with the promise of returning the next day. I went back the next day and got a mammogram, and
Look,
that's when they pulled me in the room and sat me down to have the conversation.
well, so whenever they
And
did that ultrasound and they were like, "You gotta have a mammogram now," were you already kind of like, "Oh no, this isn't good"?
no,
Huh.
nope. And then I went and got a biopsy, and that biopsy was on my 6-month wedding anniversary. So my mom actually cooked dinner for us because she knew I wasn't going to feel like going out. And so after that, that was on a Friday. So I had to wait until Monday. And Monday at 4:55 p.m., I had just pulled into my driveway, and my primary care physician called me to tell me that I had cancer. And it wasn't until that phone call that I even had any clue. It never crossed my mind. In my mind, I never ever thought it would have been cancer. And so, talk about shocking a person.
Wow. Yeah.
So, after that, I immediately went into this mode of what all needs to be done. And my mom, being a nurse, immediately started looking up the best oncologist at the hospital that she works at. And we started working with a nurse care provider to get everything set up for my treatment. And I also decided to preserve my eggs. I was 38 at the age of diagnosis. And so I knew immediately I needed to preserve my fertility.
Wow, what forethought for that, and just to jump back, I want to say it again. You were diagnosed at 38, which is super young, and for those watching, it's important to note that oftentimes it's younger women that are diagnosed with triple negative breast cancer. It's more common in younger women, and when they say younger women, they mean under 50. And you were 38 years old, so I could see how big a shock that must have been, and I'm glad you were done driving. Let me say that, because to get that kind of news when you're driving, that's not good. Were you you had just pulled up at home. Was your husband at home at the time?
No, he was actually headed home from work. So I called my mom first thing and I was hysterical. And she knew just by how, as soon as I was when she answered the phone, that the news. So she immediately hopped in the car, and I don't know how she got here and she beat him here. I truly feel like we had some angels on our side between slowing up my husband getting home and speeding up my mom getting here. But she was able to beat him here, and she was here with me when he got home for me to tell him the news.
Wow, that's crazy. That and again, it's so true, Angela. It's like, you're so young. It's like the furthest thing from your mind, and that was similar to what had happened with me, in that I really didn't think at all that I had breast cancer either, because I was young as well. I was 41, so just a few years younger than you, or older than you rather. So that's crazy. All right, so now you're home, you've got the news, and now it's time to figure out, what do I do with all this?
Yeah, it was actually a few days before I found out that it was invasive and I was going to need chemo. So first they told me I had cancer, and then they're like, we've got to wait on more test results to come back. So I had to wait a couple of more days to figure out if I was going to need chemo or not. And then a couple more days before it was discovered that it was triple negative. So
Yeah,
it was kind of a stair step diagnosis.
yeah, and I just wanted to interject, Angela, that as a breast cancer survivor, somebody who's gone through breast cancer, man, the waiting for those test results is like the worst thing ever, because you have no idea what the next news is going to be, and so your brain just goes crazy. And I'm sure that's how you were feeling too, right?
Yeah, it was. I was actually really lucky. Early on, I found a lot of triple negative breast cancer groups on Facebook. So as soon as I was diagnosed with triple negative, I went out and found those groups and was able to really get a lot of advice and get a lot of information from other fighters.
That's really, really super lucky for sure. I'm glad that you had that support group. There are some amazing support groups out there on Facebook. That is completely true. Lots of people out there to share their experiences and help lift you up. So when they first told you triple negative breast cancer, had you ever heard of that before?
I had not. My mom looked it up, and she didn't even talk to me about it. I didn't look it up. My mom did. I found that out on a Friday. And she basically thought for the whole weekend that it was a death sentence for me. And we went to the oncologist the next week, my mom, my husband, and I. And she talked to me and she said that everything was looking pretty good. I was stage 2, grade 3 tumor that was 3 centimeters. So it was a pretty good sized tumor. And the doctor said, we've caught it early. Treatment looks good. I have a good faith that we'll be able to clear this, and you'll be curable. And it was interesting because we left that appointment and we were in the parking garage, and my mom kept saying, I really like this doctor, she was really good, and she kept saying the C word. And I looked at her and I go, yes, mom, cancer. I have cancer. And I just broke down in the parking garage. And she's like, no, curable. And I was like, well, yeah, because in my mind, that was the only option. it was never going to be anything but curable.
Oh,
But my
that's
mom
good.
had read all of the negative and
Right.
all of the bad statistics about triple negative, and she was really, really worried. But in my mind, it was just going to be a blip and I was going to be through it and life was going to go on.
Well, and to that point, Bill Martin, who's watching right now, says always stay positive no matter what the situation. And he's sending you love.
Oh, thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you.
No, that's
We did
so
have,
important.
yeah, I did. I will say one thing on that. I did have a moment where my husband found himself in a pretty dark, negative place. And I looked at him and I said, I love you. I cannot surround myself with negativity right now. If that's the way you're going to be, and if that's the place you're going to go to, you're going to need to leave until I'm done with treatment. Because I knew if I let someone else or I surrounded anybody, myself with anybody that could drag me down, I knew that that was going to be my death sentence. So I focused on staying positive and keeping people around me that were positive. And from that moment on, a light switch flipped in my husband, and he turned into my biggest cheerleader and my biggest supporter. So,
Well, praise God for that. I mean, seriously, that's awesome. That's so great that you had him there by your side to help you out and to get you through those rough times and scary times for sure.
yeah.
So now we know it's triple negative breast cancer, and that you're gonna need chemo. Were you gonna have surgery as well?
Yes, that was the big question, right? To keep my breasts or to have a mastectomy. That was a really big decision to make. And I talked with several different doctors. And with the way mine was, they had said that it wasn't going to really increase my chance of survival if I had a mastectomy. So I elected to do a lumpectomy. So I did chemo first, and then I did the lumpectomy followed by radiation.
Gotcha. And so, tell me about the different treatments and what kind of an effect it had on you at the time and long term.
I was able to get into a study. So the hospital that I treated through was the University of Kansas Medical Center, and they do a lot of testing and a lot of trials. So I was able to get into a trial, and I had 12 Taxols, and they added carboplatin in every third one, followed by four ACs, Red Devils, every other week. So that was my chemo regimen. And then with radiation, I was also in a study, and that was to get a higher dose of radiation more often. So I was in a trial for that too. So I was really happy to be able to be part of the forefront of medical advancement with breast cancer.
Yeah, that's really great. There's actually a person who's going to be on the show a little later, Courtney, who was in a trial as well, and she qualified for that, which isn't always necessarily easy to qualify for, but it is super helpful for those who have to face the same kind of diagnosis later down the line. When you do that trial, it definitely helps a lot of people out there. I meant to ask you earlier, Angela, did you do any genetic testing at any point?
I did right away at my very first appointment with the oncologist. She talked about that, and I did come back negative. So I have no genetic markers.
Do you have anyone in your family that you're aware of that has cancer or has had cancer?
No, I had my paternal grandmother had breast cancer. Hers was a hormonal breast cancer, and she had it in her 80s. So that's one they don't consider to be a genetic connection.
Gotcha, gotcha. So, okay, so you said, I believe you had the chemo, you had the a lumpectomy, and you had the radiation. With the chemo, I presume since you had the red devil and some of those other nasty ones, you lost your hair and all that stuff. What kind of other side effects did you encounter?
Well, you put a girl who has had weight issues her entire life, who likes to eat, on steroids continuously for months, and she's going to gain some weight. So I've kind of joked that I would get the cancer that made me fatter instead of something that helped me to lose weight. So I went into cancer in the best shape of my life. I had just lost a bunch of weight for the wedding, and I was feeling very confident and very happy with my body and where I was physically. And I immediately started gaining weight with the steroids and being constantly hungry. Also being tired where I didn't feel like cooking dinner. So we did a lot of takeout. And over the months, I gained quite a bit of weight. Through radiation, I gained some more weight. I was very tired and sluggish during radiation. So I found myself nearly 80 pounds heavier at the end of my chemo treatment.
Did your doctor give you any advice for that or offer any like recommendations or suggestions to help combat that?
No, we didn't really discuss my weight a whole lot. I mean, she did discuss concern with the rate I was gaining weight and talked to me about eating a little bit healthier. But towards the end, the only thing I could taste was Chinese food. And there was,
It's funny, I have to tell you, because like the only thing you could eat, you could taste was Chinese food. And for me, it was a cheesecake. So yeah,
oh,
it's
I
a
like
problem.
cheesecake.
It's a problem though.
Yeah, well, there
Yeah.
was a place right by my house that delivered for the delivery charge was $1, and it
Uh-huh.
was very affordable Chinese food. It was good. So we ended up eating Chinese like 4 days a week.
Wow.
So
Wow. So you had some issues with weight gain. Were you able to drop that weight back off after your radiation and chemo?
no, I have struggled with my weight ever since.
Yeah. That's a pain. I know. I mean, it's I when I went through chemo and the steroids, you're right. It's just like you puff up, and it's really difficult. And I'm with you on that. Did you also have any like neuropathy or anything like that, or any other effects from the chemo that you recall?
I had a little bit of neuropathy in my feet. It never really spread to my hands. I tried gabapentin for a couple of times, a couple of doses, and it was really not working for me. I did use the cold gloves and the cold socks and change those out during chemo. Every chemo, I had a different chemo buddy that picked me up at my house and took me to chemo and sat with me during my treatments. So my chemo buddy helped me, to carry the cooler and to switch the ice packs out halfway through treatment. So I did do some preventatives in order to do that, but I never considered doing the cold cap. My oncologist did not recommend it at all. So I decided to just, go for it and rock the bald head for a while.
Yeah, totally. And what's funny, Angela, is like when I went through breast cancer 11 years ago, the whole like cold gloves and socks and all that stuff, that wasn't a thing. The cold cap wasn't a thing. None of that was around. So I'm curious though, why was your oncologist kind of like not into the whole cold cap thing?
Well, she had described it as it cuts off the blood supply a little bit, from going to the scalp and to the head. And if it cuts off the blood supply, that's where the chemo is traveling. The chemo goes into the bloodstream and travels through the blood. So if the blood is not getting to the scalp and to the head as much as it should, then the chemo might not get there. And so the way she described it was that it could increase my chances for brain cancer to come back, to come as a metastasize.
Wow, I hadn't heard that before, and guess what, Angela? I wrote that as a question for Dr. O today, so we'll ask her and get her opinion on that as well. That's crazy. I do want to let you know that Jan Samuels, my mom, actually has a question for you. She says
Okay.
it is so wonderful that you knew what you needed very early and were able to tell others, so they too had a positive plan. Do you have children? And if so, did you use your saved
I do not have any children. I do. We actually have made the decision that I don't think we're going to use our eggs. So I do have 8 ice babies. But at this time, simply because I've not been able to get the weight off, and I do have a lot more aches and pains and less energy as I did before, I just don't know if I would be able to really put into having a child and being a good parent. So at this point, I think that we're not going to be using those eggs.
I'm so interested in all of that because I remember having those thoughts myself back then. I didn't have any kids, but I didn't freeze any eggs or anything like that. So it's pretty crazy that you thought that, and that I'm talking to somebody who did do that. That's really cool. So is it like you pay like storage rent like once a month on those things, or how does that work? You got to tell us,
Well,
man.
First of all, I definitely want everybody to know that the Live Strong Foundation actually paid for half of my egg retrieval. So that was a huge blessing because that was a huge bill, right? And because of being a cancer patient, they actually did not make me pay for it up front. If you went to them with infertility issues, you would have to pay the bill up front. So what they did is they said, you know, you can make payments on it. You don't have to pay it up front. And the Live Strong Foundation paid for half. And that also covered 1 year of storage. So every February, I get a bill for little under $400. So I just look at it as $1 a day to continue to pay the storage fee. And I keep telling people until I am 1,000% sure, I am not going to stop paying that storage fee because I have to elect what to be done with the embryos. So I do have options with my embryos when I decide for sure that I'm not going to use them. I can elect to have them destroyed. I can have them donated to someone who will use them and turn them into a child. And I can also elect to donate them for genetic research. So those are the options that I have with the eggs.
Wow, that's so cool and such great information about Live Strong. I wasn't familiar with that, and this is a really great information to provide to our people watching today because we have so many different conversations about breast cancer and triple negative breast cancer. And like I said before the other day when we were talking, every story is unique, and this is definitely one of those unique pieces to your story. So thank you for sharing all that. I also want to tell you that Marsha Johnson is watching, and she says, "You are beautiful, Angela."
Oh, thank you, Marcia.
You rock, dude. And I want to talk, we got about 7 minutes left, but I would love for you to talk a little bit more about the radiation and then also where you are today.
Yeah. Radiation was, I did pretty good skin wise with the burns and everything. It's kind of funny when I went to my first appointment, they wanted to do the tattoos, and I have 13 tattoos, but I was like, you're not tattooing me. I don't want the tattoos. I don't want to have that memory of them. I wanted to just completely wipe it. And so we did the Sharpie marker with the skin sticker over it. And so I had to be very careful with showering because when they mapped where to put the radiation, that's how they marked it. And I went for 30 treatments, I believe. It's actually been 4 years since I finished treatment. So I think it was 30 treatments that I went through. And my mom was just such a huge help for me during all of this. She did tons of research and ordered all the different creams and everything that I might need and different soaps and lotions. So I just went off of anything she grabbed or anything she ordered for me, and I just slathered it on. And I really didn't have bad radiation burns. So I really feel like I lucked out in that arena.
You totally did, because I have definitely seen a lot of the radiation burns from our survivor sisters out there, and it can be really bad. But I've heard there's a lot of great lotions out there, like you mentioned. So that's really really great. So now, like you said, it's been 4 years since you finished treatment. Are you still going to see your oncologist on a regular basis at this time?
Well, that's a great question. As I look over in my living room here, I have something sitting on a chair that I'm going to be using next month. It is a pink graduation cap because my next appointment to my oncologist is my graduation appointment.
Woohoo! Raise the roof. That is
So I am
awesome.
so excited. I'm actually going to decorate it with some glitter and a breast cancer ribbon. I'm going to do a picture with my oncologist, and I'm really looking forward to that appointment.
That is so awesome. The last question that I have for you today, Angela, and I don't think I told you I was going to ask this, so forgive me, but can you give us one thing that you took away from this experience that was positive?
Yeah, I really learned to make everything a celebration. So when it came time for me to shave my head, I had a head shaving party. I invited my friends. We had pink champagne. We had cupcakes. A couple of my friends bought those bald head things and took pictures with me. I made it a celebration. And when it came time to ring the bell, I had over 20 people there celebrating with me, and we all went to dinner afterwards. Every year on my cancerversary, we go to Mexico, and I celebrate by watching the sunrise and thinking about what's happened in my life and how grateful I am to be where I am today. And this September is going to be my 5-year, which is a big one. And so we are going to the Bahamas, where they have a pink beach, and I'm going to have a photo shoot on a pink beach, which I have told everybody I was going to do this since my diagnosis day. So sorry, I'm so emotional, guys.
No, I totally feel
cannot
you.
wait. I cannot wait to be on that pink beach and to celebrate that huge, huge milestone.
That is so awesome. I love that. I love that. And, you know, it's just the point, Angela, that you make, that it's just giving you new perspective on life, you know, and you just embrace it, you know, and you carry those positive people around you all the time. You know, they're your cheerleaders, and to be able to celebrate like you've been planning on for so long is so awesome. I'm so excited for you. And I'm going to need to see pictures of that. And then I'm also going to need to see the pictures from the head shaving party with your friends with the bald caps on, because that's got to be hilarious. I have got to see all that for sure.
If you go to my Facebook page, I have a Facebook page. It's called Angela's Army. And if you go to that page, you can see all the photos from my journey, videos. There's a YouTube video that my friends made. They had a concert fundraiser for me, and they also did a YouTube video with an interview with my story. So you can learn a lot more about me there. And if anybody wants to connect, I really want to be able to help other people. I feel like if I can help others through my having breast cancer, then it wasn't for nothing. So if anybody can connect out, I'm happy to answer any questions or share anything or just chat.
Well, thank you so much for being so open tonight and honest and candid about your journey through triple negative breast cancer. I know that you're an inspiration to many out there. In fact, Alicia says, "We love you, and you are such an inspiration."
Oh, thank you so much. Well, thank you for having me. It was an
Yeah.
honor to be here and to participate in this.
Yeah, thanks for being here, Angela. Did you have any final thoughts or words for anybody out there that maybe is recently diagnosed with triple negative?
Um, I would just say don't hesitate to lean on people and to ask for that help and support that you might need. And, everybody needs help sometime, and now is the time that most likely you're going to need the help. So don't hesitate to reach out, even if it's to a stranger.
Solid advice, Angela. Thank you so much for joining the show tonight. I hope you'll continue to watch. And again, if you have any questions for Dr. Joyce O'Shaughnessy coming up here around 8 p.m., be sure and pop those in the comments, and we'll be sure to get your question answered. And thank you again so much for joining. I can't wait to see the pink beach, okay?
Thank you, April. And thank you, everyone, for watching.
Have a great night, girl.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right, everybody. That was Anne. She's a rock star, man. So cool of her to join us evening.